bajitunda. Olonde the one that fits ya. Katikende bajitunda. Olonde the one that fits.
Okay, welcome to another episode of the Nile Book Club with myself, Kalungi and the K. Usually we have Katasi Ichironde here from Elevate 256, but she is otherwise occupied. But today we're joined by a new member, and I'm really excited to have this member because it's always good to bring new people in, but I reached out to invite her to, to join the book club. And Chipo Kureya, right? And
Yes.
you were proper like enthusiastic about it. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I was a bit kind of uncertain whether you were actually gonna turn up. And I was literally just talking to my girlfriend about, oh no, I wonder if she's gonna turn up or not. And then you, at that moment, you joined the meeting because we've had a few, no shades to some of our silent members. We've had a few kind of inactive members, and of course, life is lifing, like you used this phrase before we started. But I always feel like we can always find time to read and discuss. Like I feel like it is like everything we do in life, it's effort, it takes time. It's just that other things make it seem like it takes less effort, but actually it takes the same amount of effort, I feel, to binge watch a Netflix series than it does to actually either pick up a book and read or listen to it. And so before we get into that, the book that we're reading this month, or we've read this month, is The Fortune Men by Nadifa Mohamed. And a quick little synopsis before I, let Chipo kind of introduce herself. The Fortune Men is based on a true story set in 1950s about Mahmoud Matan, who was a Somali sailor living in Cardiff in an area called Tiger Bay, which was well known for, being kind of multicultural, but it was really ostracized because it was multicultural. It was by the docks, and all the other areas in Cardiff kind of looked down at it, looked down at the people and the residents in here. And Mahmoud finds himself at the center of a murder investigation that he is confident will kind of emerge. He will emerge kind of vindicted and found innocent. But as we read, we discover actually things are not as clear cut as you would have hoped. And we kind of dived and dealt and introduced to a range of interesting characters. And we find out about Mahmoud's life and what led him to becoming a murder suspect in 1950s Cardiff. So, Chipo, first of all, introduce yourself. Let us know what you do,
My name is Chipo Kureya, and I'm from Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Currently living in the Ark, but what can you do?
Spell the UC for us. How is it spelled?
That's spelled the UK.
Okay,
So
okay.
some other people happen to be out here, but for some reason here we are in the diaspora. I am an actor and a producer. I've got a couple of films in pre-production at the moment.
Yes,
So I'm sure I'm going to share with you guys ways that you can get involved with Meet, the short film.
You got another one as well that's in pre-production. You're go-funding for, right?
Yeah, so the first film I made was called Nanga.
Hmm.
And so that's currently running the festivals at the moment. And I'm, like you said, I'm funding for Meet, which is really exciting. So
Okay, that's one.
we'll share that information later on.
We will.
What else am I up to? Yeah, actor, producer, filmmaker, just doing what we can to survive creatively in the Ark.
Amazing. Okay, let's segue into The Fortune Men, which has actually recently been longlisted for the 2021 well, it's not called the Man Booker Prize anymore, but the Booker Prize. And in fact, actually, you tell me what your opinion. What was your first kind of like opinion from it?
It felt so delicious to listen to it because I wanted to I wanted to buy the book, but life keeps lifing. And what I found is when I'm doing long drives, I can put it on and it can really just help me kind of get to my destination and helps me focus. And it was beautifully read, and it was just a I didn't know that it was actually based on a real story. I thought it was a work of fiction for so long. It was basically right up until the last chapter when it
Mm.
was like, and then this happened in 2010.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
This
yeah, yeah.
happened. I didn't realize that it was based on someone's real life. I just pressed play and was like, wow, this person has got such color in his storytelling and the details that it felt glorious to read, especially after a period of reading so many self-help books. I don't know if anyone else is kind of like up to here with self-help books, but
Mm.
yeah.
I feel the same way about self. I always find self-help books are basically, how to become a millionaire. But first, buy my book. It's kind of like, let me show you how I became a millionaire by writing books about how to become a millionaire. If effectively that's what they feel like sometimes. They can come across as a racket sometimes. Sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes.
I will say some of them have been incredibly useful and have helped me sort of unpack lots of like trauma and like learn about boundaries and
Yeah, yeah.
say things like affirmations. Like some of them are really incredibly useful, and I'm sure people
Mm,
know the hard hitters that are really great.
mm,
But it can get a little bit exhausting when you're constantly just working on yourself. And
mm.
to be able to just enjoy a piece of fictional writing, which I believe to have been fiction at the time, was just, it felt luxurious. That's what it
Yes.
felt
Yeah.
like to me.
Oh, that is a beautiful term to use because listening to it, like read by Hugh Kwashi, I was like yourself. I wanted to read it, but when I ordered it, it took ages to come. I think they had to like reprint and add the Booker Prize nomination because it took a long time to get to me. And by the time it got to me, I'd finished listening to it. And actually, I'm really glad I listened to it because Hugh Kwashi from Holby City, and now he's recently playing, I think, Neville Lawrence in the Stephen Lawrence um, kind of sequel, I guess you can call
Yeah.
it, the biopic, starting 30th of August. I guess it'll be out by the time this comes out. But yeah, he read this is part of the probably the best audiobook I've ever listened to. And I've done an audiobook before, so I'm kind of like, you
Gosh,
know,
I'm in the middle of my first one.
swear, what is it? What is it? Can you
I can't
say? Are you
tell
allowed to
you,
say?
I'm not allowed to say.
Oh, okay. You tell me later. Tell me later off camera.
Yeah, we'll do like
Yeah,
after
yeah.
hours.
Yeah. No, 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 no. Like this was, my one for anyone wondering. It's called Chin 2 by Jennifer Nansuga Makumbi, and it's on Audible right now. And then I've got another one, but I can't say yet. But anyway, so so Hugh Kwashi, like he's obviously a Ghanaian, I think mixed race Ghanaian, or maybe he's Ghanaian British guy, and he's got an incredible voice. And he's like, you listen to it, and you're like, yo, this guy really takes you on this journey. His accents, the characterization, the ability to kind of read some stuff in Somali. I don't know how accurate he was, but it sounded really authentic. And it kind of, I don't drive, so I listened to it when I was on the train off to work or, when I was, yeah, walking or sleeping. And I was really drawn in. Like I was really looking forward to listening and finding out what happened, even though we know what's going to happen. But it's just getting to know Mahmoud Matan and what he was going through. And it was a character study of an incredible human being. And in many, many situations and cases, I actually either came close to tears or no, I had to hold back my tears because I was walking down the street and I was like, I'm a roadman. I can't be crying like this in the streets, in the streets of South London. So
Audiobook here. Like
yeah, in it while listening to an Audible in it, like they think I'm listening to drill in it, but yeah. So I had to show them that. So I couldn't cry. So, but I came so close to tears because I was like, what a very sad story. Like the
the
guy was.
bit that got me emotional was when they were in when he was in his jail cell and he got his wife to sort of to just
Oh,
stay in the garden and he would just wave and they could see like from all the way across town. They that moment I was like, this is just heartbreaking. What we have to go through. And I think emotional is one thing, but I've been really trying to lean into and sit into my anger a bit recently. I think when you're a black woman, for so long of your existence in the arc, You don't feel like you're justified or you're allowed to be angry because of the tropes and the connotations.
Mm.
So this period of time, I've used all those self-help books to sort of like justify and allow myself and start to feel comfortable in all of my righteous rage. And I listened to this book, and yes, I was emotional, but I I was angry.
Yeah.
I was so angry, and I really almost swore just then. I was so angry.
You can swear.
I'm not going to, 'cause I'm trying to be
Okay.
good. You know, the hairstyle isn't suited. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to be nice.
It's Sunday.
You know what I mean? It's the Lord's day.
It's the Lost.
But yeah, I was so angry because it's relentless. They catch you with the slavery, they catch you with the colonization, they catch you when you haven't done anything, and then they catch you with the typecasting.
Yeah, no, I definitely, yeah, I definitely felt sad, and I think I felt more sad than angry, but I can definitely understand and empathize with your anger, where that's coming from. But absolutely right, like the moments of anger that I had is when, he was getting legal advice, and like his lawyer and the police, and they'd seen him as guilty immediately without even, like, actually at the end is probably when I got the spoiler alert, but the most angriest I got right at the end, when they were presented with two people who could potentially have been, the ones that did it, but
Mhm.
mainly the person that, there's one guy who the modus operandi was very similar to something he'd done before, but they
Yeah.
didn't take that into consideration. There was another one where I think he pretty much, did he admit it or something, that someone had seen him, and it gave the police this information, but they didn't act upon it because they wanted this guy to be the dude. And did you notice as well that he bust a few cases before this? There was loads of times where they would get him on something like some sort of robbery or something,
Mm.
and he bust the case. And that's why he had this kind of assumption that in Britain, you
Mhm.
know, the right, the justice is always served. So he
Yeah.
knew that in the past this has happened, and I've come out of this unscathed. So he kind of maintained he's like, only once he got that guilty verdict and they started sentencing him did he go, wait, hang on a minute. No, and even then, actually, he continued and he became resolute with, I've got this new piece of information. But I think when he gave up, and I guess his naivety and his ignorance did kind of um, play a major factor in how, his situation, and how it kind of like escalated so quickly, because there was a moment where he had a key piece of information, and the guy, one of the, I think Wilkinson, asked him, should we
Mm.
tell this to the judge? And he's like, nah, what's the point?
Mm.
And maybe that piece of information could have changed, but yeah.
Well, that's the thing as well. I think it speaks to pride as well. Um, I am always challenged by the way our cultures have had to shift from being on the motherland to then adapting to being here in the UK. And there are a lot of people who don't appreciate it when I say this, but when you're back home, to have multiple wives means that you're a big man. It means that you've got the capacity to look after many women and whatever. But that translated into the agriculture means that you're a cheater, you're this, that, and the other, and it means women are angry because they need to have you by yourself. But that's not exactly what's in our DNA, and that's not exactly the way it's worked for hundreds of years. So just because something has been introduced and people's minds have been shifted, it means that people grow up with believing things need to operate in a specific kind of way. And I think this man who was raised in North Africa, he has something in his DNA that says that I'm a man, I'm proudful, I hold certain things to myself, and he wasn't prepared to be shamed.
You're
I
right.
I
You're
think
right. Mm.
it hurts so many of us. So many relationships have broken down because of pride, because of that humility. And when you're broken down in a society that doesn't see you as being a full human,
Mm.
you're like, I can't give you any more of myself. You've already sort of embarrassed me to the point of the last thing I could hold on to was this relationship with the woman who I'm calling my wife and my children. If
Exactly.
if it's gonna cost me my life, that's the last thing I can hold on to at this point, and that's definitely sad.
Yeah, and also it's really important. It's really interesting you say that because I think he felt like he'd messed up so much with Laura
Yeah,
that having to then confess that the reason why
yeah.
he's in the sticky situation and he can't account for that time is because he's with another woman. That's another additional thing. She'd stood by him and she would have just kind of went, you know what, you're a piece of shit. You're a piece of, but then it makes you think, come on, bro, like your wife being upset and angry at
The
you.
things that was really great about his character were those moments of his actual defiance, and that's what I found really exciting. Like when he did mug that woman, or when he did steal that coat, I was like, yeah, go on, steal it, take
Mm,
it, I
mm,
say.
yeah.
I was- because what do we have left? We've already been robbed and oppressed, and then racism to the eyeballs.
Mm,
Yeah, you're gonna look at me sideways. That's what you want, isn't it? You want
mm,
me to be this evil villain, so maybe you deserve it. And I'm not saying I advocate that, but
mm.
don't cross me in it.
Yeah, well, we definitely won't. We're also gonna hide our silverware, hide your wives, hide the kids. Um, but okay, so that's really going back to what you said about actual the polygamy kind of monogamy aspect on how maybe him being, because if this was in Somalia, he
Mm,
probably would have said, yeah, I was with another thing and what, but
mm,
because he's in, he's in the UK, he understands the shame that first of all would land upon him, but also the shame that would land upon his missus, having not only taken this African man, but he'd kind of acted upon his African instincts,
yeah.
because that's what they all saw him. The dad, everyone was like, you wait, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. And vice versa. The Somali community was also telling him as well, like, you wait, she's going to do this, this is going to happen because you're dealing with white people. But yeah, that idea, it is obviously very controversial, so, but it doesn't, let's kind of like link it to the book. Like, do you think, he would have lived a completely different life, Mahmoud, and had he stayed in Somalia, or do you think he's kind of fate was already sealed?
I I don't know. I don't know. I feel like he lived a full life because of the risks that he was willing to take. And yeah, it's a life that's full of courage and adventure. And it was cut short by dallying one time too many, I suppose. Like, what is it, The Boy Who Cried Wolf?
Mm,
He got away with a lot of stuff in a lifetime. Like, for all for however boring or dull it might be for those people who are just 9 to 5, they're not just 9 to 5ers, but
mm,
people in boring jobs, they make the world go round. Do you know what I mean? What is it they say, the good die young, or like when you run to the, like Icarus, the story of
yeah,
Icarus
yeah, 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 yeah,
with
yeah.
the feathers flying too close to the sun. Like,
Mm,
he pushed it, man. He pushed it and he pushed it and we pushed it, and
mm.
because of that, he will be immortalized in this text
Yeah.
at the end of the day. Like, because there are others who did not push their luck and who just lived contrary lives and were very sensible and didn't take any risks, and they will be forgotten. But
Mm,
this guy lived a life worth documenting, and that's so exhilarating. And that's really what we crave. We crave legacy, we crave story, we crave a history, especially when we've been raised in the diaspora, when we've been denied it for so long. So yeah, he may well have stayed in Somalia. I don't know that we'd be able to celebrate him if he hadn't taken those chances that he did take.
but do you
And maybe
think,
it took him dying for there
yeah,
to be a story.
but do you think his life in Somalia would have been as, would he have kind of like ended up the way he ended up in the UK? Do you think he would be maybe not alive today because he would have been very old, but do you think he would have lived to older age beyond 27?
Yeah, he would have got beyond 27. He would have got to his 70s or 80s and like, seen his grandchildren and lived a textbook life, I imagine. But I feel like there would have been something inside of him that would have been left unfulfilled, unquenched, because it was always inside of him. That's the spirit that I got when hearing the story being read to me, that this is someone who was a rolling stone.
He definitely was. And yeah, and I think, yeah, he was, it really is a tragedy, actually. This really is the epitome of a tragedy, because like you read it obviously knowing what's going to happen, and he lived a kind of almost an Odysseus kind of like life with his travel and where he'd been, and to think that actually the UK didn't value him. I feel like he was a lot bigger than what was expected of him, because even when he was speaking to like the two guards and he told them about things he'd experienced, there was almost a sense of like, yeah, sure you did. He was like, yeah, I've been to the seven seas and I could walk from here to Australia and I can do it. They didn't believe him. And I feel like it kind of links perfectly to a lot of our stories, like you mentioned about the diaspora, where maybe in school you tell people, oh yeah, by the way, in Zim or in Uganda, I do this, I did this, my family was this. And they go, yeah, sure it was. And it's that expectation or even lack of maybe expectation for Africans in the ACK or the UK that
Mm.
maybe leads to people going a little bit astray, where it's like, well, I'm going to show you. Because I think there was a line where he was like, well, I'm going to show you, I'm going to be the monster that you said I was.
Yeah.
Let me be the monster, you know?
It reminds me of another book, but it's a book about education. It's called Who's Afraid of the Big Black Boy?
Oh,
And
yeah.
of course, the cover's menacing, and you've just got this like little Karen teacher who's got to deal with this 14-year-old who's 6'2". Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what we have to deal with. And how do you discipline? How do you control? And do you even need to control in that kind of way? I I got to a point recently when I was just really frustrated. I'd lost empathy for white women. You know what I
Mm,
mean?
okay.
In this kind of really specific way, just because I realized that so much of my destiny has been tied up into this monolith, these white women. Like every primary school teacher I'd had, every secondary school teacher I'd had, every agent I'd had, like all these casting directors, like all of these moments in my life were just like held by these gatekeepers who, when they felt fit, were like, oh yeah, of course, I definitely believe in you, I definitely think, but they don't really understand. And I remember I was specifically offended because there was a cultural festival going on, and three white women headed up a theatre company where they were trying to do something for the Black community, and in the production were four Black men, and I just felt like the content of what they were showing was important. Everything that they were saying was reasonable and fair, but there was a disconnect here. This wasn't their message to tell through this platform. It wasn't for them to commission these four Black boys to go and then do the service of the story. Like it just felt like, is this still happening? Like, is this what's happening? It felt deeply uncomfortable. And it just like, if these things keep happening, and what shift needs to take place for us to actually have autonomy and have our stories. And that's why it's so heartbreaking that it takes something like this happening for us to even have a story. Do you know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and actually that makes me think, I'm so glad like Nadifa Mohamed wrote this story, because if this was many years ago, I think it would have been co-opted by a white author who kind of like maybe decides, I've spent some time in Somalia, maybe they were a journalist, and they decide to go, yeah, this is a really interesting story for me to tell. Or even a Welsh author who go, yes, I've heard of the story, it's based in Wales, but actually I was really glad that it was a Somali, author, British Somali author, in this case Nadifa Mohamed, who did the research. And she's a brilliant writer. Like I read another book of hers, I think called Orchard of Souls, a few years back, and from what I remember, it was gripping. But yeah, and I was really interested. I was really glad that she was, she wrote this. I wonder actually, because me and you talked about Hugh Koshi being the narrator, I wonder if a Somali person listening to this would have wanted to hear Somali voice actor do
It's
that.
challenging, isn't it? Because we are trained, as actors, we have to draw the line somewhere at the point at which we get someone who's trained and has got the credits and the capacity to just do the gig, or just tick in that box to make sure that we get someone who's authentic.
I agree. I agree. Especially when it comes to accents, man, because like Hugh Koshi, like like you said, has the capacity to do all these different voices and accents. And as you know, as someone who does audio works,
Mm.
you do get signed off by the author. And in my case, I was signed off by the author not once but twice.
Mm.
And luckily enough for me, the author is Ugandan and I'm Ugandan. But
Mm.
of course, I haven't been to Uganda for a very long time, and she could have selected someone who actually is a more authentic Ugandan, but she went for me. And same thing with whatever project you're doing. I'm sure the author went, boom, yes, I agree with that. And I would say the same thing probably went for Hugh Kwashi as well, where
Yeah.
she went, she's heard what he's done. She sees that he's a Ghanaian man, but the story and the narrative takes priority over the so-called kind of authenticity. Because I listen to it, and if you don't know it's Hugh Kwashi, you just go, this guy is really good at this accent. Like he's really good at doing
But the
this thing.
whole thing was, like
Yeah,
I said before, it was gorgeous to listen
yeah.
to. So his storytelling capabilities were married perfectly with the beautiful writing, so that I just would recommend it to anybody. Now that I've listened to it, read in that way, I don't know that I even can enjoy it any other way. It was perfect, in
I
my
will.
opinion.
I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. I will say though, to be devil's avocado, would you be happy as a Zim person to listen to a Zim audiobook? Like say, for example, we on Nile Book Club, we read We Need New Names
Yeah.
by No Violet Bulawayo, right?
Mm.
And the read of that, as far as far as I know, isn't from Zimbabwe. I could be wrong. Her name's Robin Miles, so she could be from Zim.
Mm.
But I saw a review and someone was like, "Yeah, why didn't they get a Zimbabwean person to read this? The way she pronounced the names wasn't right." Would you be happy to listen to as a book about Zimbabwe not read by a Zim reader?
I would only Your back comes up when you hear the mistake. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm bigging up our guy here because it sounded authentic to me when the Arabic and the Swahili and all of the other languages and accents came through. They sounded good to me.
But we're not Somali and we're not
And
Arabic.
that's what I'm saying. So if I was to listen to the audiobook of We Need New Names and I heard her saying Harare, that would really upset me. Or if she said Chengeta, or like, do you know what I mean? Of if they
Yeah,
said
yeah.
Hameno Jaco, like if they did something like that, that would really, I don't know. I don't know if I'd write a letter to Ofcom, but I would be like, oh, yeah, I'd stop probably listening and just read the actual
Mm.
book and flip through the pages.
I would only because Nadifa Mohamed, I follow her on Twitter and she's very vocal about, you know, opinions she has and she's very confident. Because I would imagine she signed off of it. I don't want to speak for her.
Mm.
I would like to say that she was happy with the choice of Hugh Kwashi. But I don't know what a Somali person, I would have to ask my friend if he would be listening to that going, nah, they should have got a Don from. But then he also has to do accents in Welsh and also the Caribbean or Jamaican accents and then Indian accents. So do we then do this new thing that people are starting to do? We're taking away from the book slightly, but like, do we do this new thing where now they're actually starting to, they'll get a narrator, but then they'll get someone else to read the dialogue, which I personally don't think is a good idea. Because now we're doing radio play.
I am like, there is so much stuff going on in the world that the levels of deflection and distraction are just too much now.
Mm.
Can we just get on with dealing with actual racism? If that's your problem, why don't we go to the source then? Why don't we actually deal with the arms? Why don't we deal with refugees? Why don't we deal with the UN? Why don't we deal with climate change? Like, when you think about the amount of effort and energy that's going into something like this, let's be reasonable about the amount of effort and energy that we pour into the debate that's being had. That's all.
True, true. Yeah. In the grand scheme of things, when you look at, bigger perspective, bigger issues, something as tiny as, who the reader is of a book that has many, many different accents and many different kind of, because even the narration as well isn't in a Somali accent. I do understand that that seems very trivial. So you're absolutely right. I agree with that. And even like bigger issues beyond just like the word of reading, like whether it's casting choices or even, writers' choices, narration, storytelling, and all of that. But it's just interesting that I think.
Especially because we are people of the global majority, I think we know very clearly what the biggest problems are. And if more people steered their energy into de-investing into sort of like the powers that are holding all of the gates and the keys and stuff, and didn't use it as an opportunity to sort of like return on each other and be like, actually, you're Ghanaian and you're Somalian, like, because I call it we're Kush, do you know what I mean? Where we are the whole of Ethiopia, like we are so much stronger and better together, that if this person who's from the continent, who is our people, he can do the job. Let's just trust him to do the job, just because he's a couple of 100,000 miles that way, but he's still one of us and he did a great job, and I just want to give him his flowers for that.
Word, 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 word. And we have to say big up, obviously, to the writer, Nadifa Mohamed, for writing for me what I would say it's been about 7 months, 8 months. We've read probably about 6 or 7 books. And for me, my Ugandan author aside, Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi with The First Woman, I would say this is probably the best book we've read this year, man.
It's
In my
incredible.
opinion, it's amazing, man. And I think, and rightly so, even with like The First Woman with Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi, like she's been given so many awards and award nominations, and I would say the same thing with this book, The Fortune Men. Deservedly so. She's going to be on lists of so many other, book prizes, because people need to read this. You cannot read this book and not really think about, first of all, issues around capital punishment, but also issues around belonging, family, the justice system. And it makes me think, I want to ask the question, because recently Priti Patel was, I think, asked whether capital punishment should return and something like that. And she was literally trying to call for it. But actually, what happened to Mahmoud Matan is proof that capital punishment should not come back, because then 40 so years later, he's being kind of vindicated, and the verdict is being overturned. But it's too late because the guy is dead.
It's so challenging, isn't it? Because one thing always begets the other. If there was no capital punishment, would there have been the same level of energy and effort gone into clearing his name? Because they would still have their father alive that they could go and see and visit. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't know the answers to any questions, but I would never say bring that shit back, because it's not in our hands. One of the reasons that the world is in such a mess is because a select group of people believe that they were God. Do you know what I mean? And it's meant that so many of us have just continue to be oppressed and pushed down, and it's not right. There are certain things you just can't do. There are certain things that you just cannot do. Like, and to take someone's life, no matter what, like I really find that, even with Purge, I'd be like, nah, mate, like, do you know, I'll punch you because, you piss me off. But like, to take someone's life, you have to be really dark to do that, and on purpose, and call it justice in front of people. Like, it's really nasty,
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
nasty.
And it's also the hypocrisy of the religion that they use to kind of justify their decisions, the hypocrisy of their interpretation of that religion. Because on one hand, they talk about, you know, the sanctity of life, because they wouldn't sanction suicide or whatever, or even assisted suicide. But then to take someone else's life as whatever retribution for them allegedly taking someone else's life is wrong, really, really wrong. But take it back to the book. I really, really enjoyed it. Were there any kind of moments that you thought were a bit lacking in the book?
I would have loved to have read more about his children. Like those moments felt really special, and a bit more about what that life would have been like while he was on the motherland, you know? The book was I mean, it's already a hefty book, do you know what I mean? So I don't know how much more you can squeeze in. You just want more all the time, don't you? I don't think it lacked in anything for sure. I just am greedy for the goods that were just coming out and I wanted more, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah,
What about
definitely.
yourself? Did you think anything was
Was anything lacking? Yeah, you know what? I think they didn't spend enough time on him being in Somalia. I think there was a lot of time in Wales, and I feel like a lot of his actual formative years were in Somalia, because I think he came to Wales when he was like in his 20s, wasn't he, like 25 or something like that?
a
Or
young
even
guy?
younger. Yeah, he was a young guy. I
I
thought he was
was
older.
really surprised actually,
Same.
because I felt like halfway through the book, it's like maybe he shouldn't have lied and said that he was 20.
Yes.
Yeah, because he was lying, isn't it?
He was
He
lying
said
about
he
it.
was 27, but it was actually 24 or
Yeah,
something like
yeah, yeah, yeah. He was like, yeah, maybe you should have said that his real age of 24. Maybe they would have taken leniency on him. It's like, wow, so you were 20. So he's a very young man. And in I would have been nice to kind of know more about his family in Somalia and his father and his siblings and so on and so
and
forth.
what
But
that culture looks like. I think we're so
yeah,
starved of those cultural representations. Like, yeah, the West, yeah, racism, yeah, the white lady, yeah, she got killed. We see it on Line of Duty all the time, dramas, isn't it? But
mm.
that's, I think, if they were to go back and do that research and tell us more about what that was like, what is that life like?
Mm.
Tell us, because we're starved of that. We're hungry to know what's going on at
Yeah,
home, you know?
yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And did it kind of inspire you to write your own novel? I know you're a writer on other, unless you are writing already, like, I don't know.
I call myself actor producer because um I probably just don't have the patience to sit there and be like, yes, this is the story. Like I really haven't got the patience, but I've got the stimuli for lots and lots of stories inside of me. And at the point that I've got the coin to commission someone, I might just call this girl because she's got away with the pen.
Yeah, yeah. Get option this book.
Yeah,
Option this book
exactly.
before someone
Exactly.
else does it, you know? Option.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's really important to be honest,
yeah.
because we need to be at the forefront and at the helm behind the lens, not
Mm,
just cast as an option. We
yeah.
need to be making these creative decisions, directorial choices, producing, bringing people in. It's
Mm.
important.
Do you think this would make a good film or TV series?
It probably ends up being maybe a six-part,
Yes.
like one of those BBC six-part type things, because a film, it's too much juice to just try and squeeze into one sit down.
Mm.
And if it's end up being like a long TV series, I don't think, no, I think a six-part is sufficient.
Six-parter. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think we'll make an excellent six-parter. Yeah, like BBC, nice BBC series. Dive deep into, his situation and and it'll be a great showcase for like a Somali actor as well. I know one guy who went to Guildhall, like he was 2 years below me. His
Mhm,
name's Hassan Najib, and
mhm.
I think he would be really good as um as Mahmoud. He's like
Okay,
young. Yeah,
cool. I think that's what we need to do then, isn't it?
yeah. Get
Let's
them.
talk after.
Let's,
I better go because I've got my next thing at 7.
okay.
Ah.
Wow, wow, wow. Busy, busy, busy. All right. Well, thank you so much. And quickly plug your socials and the things you're working on very quickly.
Yes, so I am Chipo Kureya. You can find me at Dame Chipo. Dame Chipo. That's on Twitter and Instagram. You can also follow the short film fundraising page, which is at Meet Short Film, MEAT Short Film. Yeah, and this is all under Bantu Creatives because we are hashtag from the Bantu, and I really can't wait to connect with you all soon.
Amazing. And when does the fundraising end? Is it continuous?
It's ongoing for the moment because I want to
Okay.
make sure I collect the coin. I'm not
Okay, cool.
starting anything until I've got it in place.
Okay, cool. All right then. Well, good. Thank you so much, Chipo. Really appreciate it. And we'll select our next book and hopefully see you next month.
100%. If you just 079. Oh yeah, I was about to say my number.
Oh, no, just
There you go.
okay, cool. All right, brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. All right, see you later. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Katigen dije bajitunda, all on day the one that fits ya. Katigen dije bajitunda, all on day the one that fits ya. Katigen dije bajitunda, all on day.